Hi, my name is Vicky Bone. I'm the destination enrichment expert on board the Caribbean Princess, and today I have the pleasure to present to you the Port Talk about Boston, Massachusetts. Here it is on the map. I absolutely love Boston. I didn't want to love Boston at some points because I lived in Vancouver, and the Boston Bruins beat us in the Stanley Cup. But every time I come here, I fall in love with it again. Boston is the cradle of liberty. It's really the center of the Revolutionary War. Boston is the capital. It's also the largest city in the state of Massachusetts. The actual city's population is 675,000, but the city actually is much larger. The metropolitan area known as Greater Boston is home to just under 5 million people. I always want to cover some history. So, here in Boston, well, the region has been inhabited since at least 2400 BC by numerous indigenous groups who lived in this area. Prior to European colonization, the region around modern day Boston was home to, like I said, several tribes. They tended to come to the coast for in the summers for fishing, and then they would travel inland in the winters where they do their hunting there. The people who lived in the area most likely moved, like I said, between the summer homes, summer camps along the water, and then inland along the Charles River to have their winter residences. The first European that came here was Captain John Smith in 1614. He explored the whole coastline of New England, and he actually called it New England because it was quite attractive for people over in England to possibly come and settle here. Initially, the commercial purpose was to take whales and fins and the oil from the whales and maybe, go into the mines and look for gold or copper, but neither of those were really practical here. So the voyage ended up turning into collecting things like fish and furs that were then sold in England to defray the cost of their expeditions to the New World. Captain Smith actually published a map in 1616, and it was based on his expedition. And it also is the first map that labels the area New England. You probably can't see it very well, but there are names of places that have been anglicized. They did have Indian names, but they were replaced with a name that was given more of an English sounding names. That was because the king wanted that. He wanted to entice Europeans to settle in this area. The settlers of Plymouth Colony adopted the name that Smith gave to the area. And within a few years, more than half of the Native Americans that were living here had died, mainly because of diseases that were introduced from the Europeans, especially smallpox. Initially, a fleet of ships helmed by Puritans had left England in 1630. They were looking for religious freedoms. They came and settled in the Massachusetts Bay. And then there was a group led by John Winthrop, and this group was the Pilgrims from Plymouth Colony. They had been there for about 10 years, and then they ended up coming up to this area about 40 miles south of the Cape Cod Bay. Now, the area was originally called Mountain for the three hills in the areas, but the Puritans later changed the settlement. They named it Boston after the town in Lincolnshire, England, from which many of the Puritans originated. As Boston grew and prospered, there was tensions between the colonists and also the English governors that were in the area. In the 1760s, the British were very much deep in debt. So Britain imposed a series of taxes on these American colonies to help pay for those debts. Britain taxed things like paper products, paint, glass, lead, and tea. And remember, though, Britain needed the colonies in the New World to send over the raw goods, things like lumber, to make these items in England, and then those items were sold back to the colonists and they were taxed. The colonists disagreed with this. They were furious that they were being taxed. They didn't have representation in Parliament in England, and they felt it was wrong that Britain was imposing this tax on them to gain revenue. They wanted a voice. So that's where we got the saying, no taxation without representation. Things further heated up with the Boston Massacre. The Boston Massacre happened on March the 5th of 1770. It was started out as kind of like a street brawl between a few American colonists and some British soldiers. They later referred to it as the Boston Massacre. It was a fight. They're kind of an unruly group of colonists. They were upset. They ended up throwing snowballs, ice, oyster shells at the British sentinel that were guarding the Boston Commons house. So the British asked for reinforcements. They arrived. They opened fire on the colonists, and they killed 5 of the colonists and they wounded 6. And the Boston Massacre and its fallout really lit the fire even more so under the colonists towards Britain. After the Boston Massacre, like I said, the colonists were angered. In 1773, Britain imposed a Tea Act levy. It imposed teas on the tea that was being imported into the colonies. The colonists, they formed together and they called themselves the Sons of Liberty. They staged the Boston Tea Party on December 16th, 1773 at Griffin Wharf. They ended up dumping some 45 tons of tea into the Boston Harbor. It was 3 hours it took them to dump 342 chests into the ocean. The chest held more than 90,000 pounds of tea, and it would cost, in today's dollar, about $1,700,000. Now, the event was the first major act of defiance to the British rule by the colonists, and it showed Great Britain that Americans were not going to take things lightly. They didn't want to be taxed without some kind of representation. So they rallied together. American patriots across the 13 colonies started to fight for independence. The Boston Tea Party Museum is located on the very same body of water where it actually occurred over 2 centuries ago. You get to go there, you can see some actors in costumes, you get to interact with some of the exhibits. Then they have a full-scale replica of the 18th century vessels that were involved, and you get to dump tea over into the water. And I'll tell you a little bit more about where it's located when I just talk about sights to see. And Boston continued to grow well into the 1800s. It saw significant population growth. Irish came here, especially after the potato famine, but also Italians, Eastern Europeans, and many Chinese immigrated to the Boston area. Today, Boston is the center of scientific research. It has numerous colleges and universities, notably Harvard University, MIT, Boston, Northeastern, and Emerson, and many more. There are world leaders in higher education, including law, medicine, engineering, and business. Some of the food and drink, because traveling is more than just seeing the sights, it's important to experience a bit of the culture here. Well, they don't call it Beantown for nothing. It has a very rich history of beans being cooked up by the Native Americans. Beans are slowly baked in molasses with pork and served pretty much as a staple with all different meals during the day. Boston cream pie. As the story goes, the Omni Park Hotel is the birthplace of this dessert. This decadently delicious dessert is actually a cake. But back then, when it was invented in the 1850s, the term cake and pie were used interchangeably because both were cooked in the same type of pan. Now, Boston cream pie is two layers of a yellow butter cake, and they have a very thick, sweet custard in the middle, and then they always top it with a glaze of chocolate. New England style clam chowder. Now, food historians tell us that we know what we know today as New England clam chowder was introduced to the region by the French, the British, and Nova Scotian settlers in the early 1600s. And being a coastal city with lots of different access to seafood, Boston was certainly an early adopter of this very thick soup that's traditionally made with clams, potatoes, onions, salt pork, and milk or cream. Oh, well, Boston has a huge neighborhood of Italians. It's the area of the North End, it's within the city limits. And really, I have to say, if you're wanting to try probably some of the best cannolis in the world, I think, definitely head to the North End. Now, there are two rivalries here, Mike's Pastry and Modern Pastry. Both are on Hanover Street in the North End, and they both offer great cannolis. I think they're both fabulous. If you're over there, maybe pop in, grab one, maybe bring some back to the ship, share it with your destination expert. But there are, if you can't make it to those two, there are many others in North End that you could try as well. Cranberry juice. Well, the whole state is known for its beautiful crimson cranberry bogs, and the drink is the unofficial state signature drink. In fact, Ocean Spray is owned by cranberry growers as a co-op in the US, and their base is in Massachusetts. And you can check out things like cranberry liqueur. They make cranberry seltzers, different iced teas. They definitely make mixed cocktails that have cranberry juice in them as well. Well, Cheers. Cheers is a bar restaurant located right across from the Boston Public Gardens. The bar was founded in 1969 and it was called the Bull and Finch Pub. Everybody sing along.
Troubles are all the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name. You wanna go where people know people are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
What a great show. In fact, you can watch it on demand in your cabins as well. The show only filmed the outside of this location, the exterior setting only. Inside, it is not the scenes from the Cheers show. But you can go and visit the actual bar, and inside they have a really great gift shop that has all kinds of Cheers memorabilia, but they also have a pub restaurant, and they even have it looking like the Cheers bar on the show, but that's not where they filmed it. It is open from 11 o'clock every single day. Now, I'm going to warn you that the outside is now doing some renovations. So they have scaffolding up. I don't know how long it's going to be there, but it's been there since the last time I was here. So you really can't get very good pictures of it. You know, everything's kind of covered. It's sad, but unfortunately, that's just the way it is. They're taking care of the building. If you're wanting to go to the Cheers bar, it's literally right across the street from the Boston Public Gardens, Boston Commons there. If you're on the hop on, hop off bus, they do stop here as one of their stops. For sights to see, well, there is so much to see here. I can't possibly cover it in the time that I'm given. So I'm just going to cover some of them. And if you have some that you want to go to and I didn't mention it, come see me at my desk and I can help you. The Boston Common is the start of the Freedom Trail, and it's really a unique collection of museums, churches, meeting houses, burying grounds, parks, a ship, very historic markers that tell the story of the American Revolution. There are 16 different sites along the Freedom Trail. It takes it's about a 2.5-mile trail, and you'll see the trail in the sidewalk. It's identified by red bricks that are connected that you can follow along. And then when you get to one of the historic sites, there's a marker there in it. But I would say it's probably best to be part of a tour because you're going to have somebody explaining the detailed information of where you're at. And it's very, very historical, these areas that we're traveling along. There is a Black Heritage Trail as well. Boston first African residents that arrived here. They arrived here as slaves in 1638 with early colonists. And after the American Revolutionary War, Massachusetts effectively abolished slavery. So the trail has historic buildings along it. They are homes, businesses, schools, churches that were part of the thriving Black community at the time. Now, these historic sites all along the 1.6-mile trail are usually now privately owned and run. They might be a residence or a business or something. They're not all open to the public, but you can go on a tour of this as well. They also have some very good self-guided trail maps that you can follow along, and you can get that online at the National Park Services app called NPS, and you could download that to your phone and do the trail. You also can get maps at the visitor information of the trail as well. Faneuil Hall, well, it was started and built in 1742 by Peter Faneuil. He was one of Boston's wealthiest merchants, and he built Faneuil Hall as a gift to the city. The hall is very historically important because this is the place where those colonists met, and they were there to discuss, well, the liberation of the American colonies from Britain. It is also home to the town government. It's also where, public halls and concerts and banquets happened. It's the home of free speech, the cradle of liberty. It hosted America's first town meeting. And if you go outside and you look 85 feet above, you'll see on the top a very cherished symbol to Bostonians. It's a grasshopper weather vane. It was installed here in 1742. Now, it moves with the breeze. It has been doing that for over 270 years. I always tell guests that this is a great spot to pop into for a few reasons, not only the historical importance, but they have a very good visitor information center inside, and it's free public washrooms as well. So I know when you're running around, sometimes that is hard to find. Here you can get a free washroom. Now, Faneuil Hall was expanded to include Quincy Market in 1826. When Boston was growing quite rapidly, they needed a larger marketplace. So on the far right at the lower side of the picture, that is the Faneuil Hall. On the left side with the arrow closer to the water, that is Quincy Market. It was named in honor of the mayor at the time, Josiah Quincy. He was the one that was responsible for the construction of it, and he built Quincy Market without collecting any taxes or any debt to pay for it. The market remained quite a vital business hub throughout the 1800s, but by the 1900s, the building had fallen into disrepair, and many of the stalls stood empty, and that once thriving marketplace was tagged for demolition. But there was a committee, a group of Bostonians, and they sought to preserve it. And today it is a bustling spot with lots of shops, restaurants, live entertainment. Doesn't open up until about 10 o'clock, Sundays 11 a.m. But you can pop in there, great spot for souvenirs, little, artistic things, food, and so forth. And again, free washroom. Now, both Quincy Market and Faneuil Hall, they're about a 15, 20-minute drive away. If you are wanting to walk, you can do that. It takes about a 40-minute walk to get there. Paul Revere was one of the Sons of Liberty. He was a member and a patriot. He's best known for his midnight ride. He went on this ride and he alerted the colonial militia in April of 1775 of the approach of the British forces. He bought a house here in Boston in 1770 on the North Square in Boston's North End, and it is the oldest house in Boston. You can easily go there and visit it. It's one of the stops on the Hop On Hop Off bus. The Boston Common is a public park. It's right in the heart of downtown. It's the oldest city park in the United States. It consists of 50 acres, and during the 1630s, the common was used by many families as a cow pasture, but they needed to limit it, so they ended up in 1646 limiting it to only 70 cows at the time. The common continued to host cows until they were banned in 1830. The Common also is the spot where Nova Scotia sends a Christmas tree every year to thank people of Boston for the help that they provided to Halifax when the Halifax had the great explosion of December 6, 1917. You can walk to the Boston Commons. It's pretty flat terrain to go along, 45 minutes, 20-minute drive. Again, this is one of the stops on the Hop On, Hop Off. Well, Fenway Park is America's most beloved park. While the stadium was built in 1912, it has been home to the Boston Red Sox baseball team. It is the oldest active ballpark, and it has hosted the World Series 11 times, with the Red Sox winning 6 of them. You can go there. They have tours. You have to check their website for the tours and to book it directly. But this is a great spot to go to. About a 20-minute drive or so to get to Fenway Park. And like I mentioned earlier, Boston is home to some of the world-famous universities. Among them, world-class institutions: Harvard, MIT, Massachusetts Institution of Technology is what it stands for. You can do some self-guided tours there. Harvard has an app that you can download, and you can walk around and it give you a self-guided tour. And how fun. You can actually tell your family and friends that, hey, I went to Harvard. Now, if you wanted to get away from downtown Boston, you might want to look at going to Salem. Now, Salem is famous for the witch trials that were a series of hearings and prosecutions of people that were accused of witchcraft in the Massachusetts state. They happened between 1692 and 1693. More than 200 people were accused, 30 people were found guilty, and 19 of whom were executed by hanging. Of the 19, 14 were women and 5 were men. You can go there, you can step back into the time of 1692, you can visit the Salem Witch Museum, you can relive the witchcraft hysteria that once overwhelmed superstitions in Salem Village. It is a bit of a distance away, it's about an hour away, so I highly recommend that you're part of a tour. For activities to do, like I've mentioned already a little bit, there is a very good hop on, hop off bus. It's called the Old Town Trolley, been around for over 35 years. And It's the only trolley company that actually comes to the cruise dock pier. So when ships are in port, their tour includes the cruise pier. There are a few other tour companies that provide like a hop-on, hop-off bus, but their route isn't as extensive as the trolley tour, and they don't come into the port area. It takes about 2 hours to do the whole route if you're not going to get off, and it's totally narrated by the driver. It's very good. You could also do a harbor cruise tour through the harbor, which is a pretty interesting harbor. Again, they're going to talk about the Revolutionary War, the local legends of the sea, and how the harbor here was transformed into one of the cleanest waterways in the country. And if you want a kind of a combination of both, you might want to try the Boston Duck Tour. So you do a little bit of a tour on land, and then you head into the harbor as well. For practical information, well, we dock right at the port and it's called the Flynn Cruise Port. It used to be called Black Falcon Cruise Terminal. It's about 2 miles from the heart of Boston. So you can walk it, or you can easily take a taxi. There will be taxis there. They have Uber. There will also be, maybe you could take a city bus. I'll cover that in a minute. But around the port, it used to be very industrial, old warehouses and stuff, but it kind of got gentrified. They've now been converted into office buildings, condominiums, apartments, trendy restaurants, bars, hotels, and shop. So it's a nice little area to walk around, maybe grab a meal. The port building itself, very basic, but they do have some seating outside and they do have washrooms there and they do provide free Wi-Fi throughout the building. They have a very good tourist information right at the pier. You can go grab a map and you can also ask questions. I've also found that there are numerous people as soon as you exit that you can ask questions to as well. For transportation, if you're on a ship's tour, check your tour ticket to find out where you're to meet. If you're going out from the ship onto a bus, the buses pull right up to the terminal. It's not a very far walk. If you want, you can take a taxi. They're readily available at the port. You also have Uber and other ride-sharing apps that you can use. There's the taxis here are regulated. They take cash, debit, and credit card. You can take transit here. The Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, MBTA, have very good transit system. I don't always cover transit systems, but here it's very excellent. And you would want to be taking the Silver Line or the SL2 bus, which is right on the street outside the port building. So here is a little bit of a map that will show you where it is. And it's $2.50 to ride it. You're going to have to pay cash. You can't buy the pass. They have like a pass that you can reload or you can buy something from a kiosk, but you can't get it from the buses. So the ship is going to dock here. You're going to exit the port building right onto Dry Dock Avenue. Turn right. There's a bus stop right there. There's another bus stop right here and another one just a bit further down. And you take that to the South Station. Now from South Station you can basically walk pretty much anywhere in downtown Boston, or you can hop on some other means of transportation if you're wanting to go a little bit further out. We're dealing with the American dollar here, so that's not a problem for most people, but if you're say Canadian, 1.32 Canadian dollars equals 1 US. Numerous banks, ATMs all around the city. Now, if you're not, if you're wanting to watch this on your TV, if you're in your cabin, you already know how to do this, but you go to My Cruise on the left, you click on Shore Excursions and Destinations. You'll open up into a new window, and one of the tabs of that is called the Port Talks. You just click on any of the Port Talks that are up there. I do record some of my talks live, and some of them are recorded earlier, basically because it's such a port intensive cruise, but you can go to those and you could watch it at your leisure. It takes a little bit of time to get uploaded if it's done live. Now, I do have desk hours. It's located at the Shore Excursion desk on deck 6 forward, right in front of the Crown Grill restaurant. I don't work for Shore Excursions, so I can't answer specific questions about shore excursions, but I can help you if you have some questions about the ports and how to get to places and so forth. My hour is on the back of the paddle. It's under Shore Excursions. They have their hours, and then right below it is Destination Expert, and that's highlighted what my hour is every day. But if you see me around the ship, say hi. If you have any questions, you can ask me. But at my desk, I have my binder. I have full of information. I can actually show you on a map where things are and so forth. And I always end all of my talks with a quote. And so today's quote is, "The great difference between voyages rests not with the ships, but with the people you meet on them." Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.